What's up, everybody? Welcome back in to another episode of The Lawyer You Know, and we're going to break down the fact witnesses that continue to not help Hank Brennan with the timeline, but he's going to have to deal with it eventually, and we get our first taste of the investigation. What do we think the jury is thinking about that investigation? Thanks for hanging around. I'm early, right? It's not even 7 o'clock yet. Sorry for all the delays. I do apologize. Thankful you guys are here to hang out, talk about this case with me. I'm excited to answer your questions and see what you thought of the witnesses today. So let's get into it. Oh, I don't even have my phone out of my pocket yet. We don't have the TV on behind me, so it's just a black screen, and you get to see all the screens here as we go, but we are here, and we're ready to talk about the Karen Read trial. I had a meeting that ran an entire hour over with a client. It was a super important meeting, so it was fine, and I appreciate you guys being gracious in the chat and hanging here. So let's get to today's testimony, and we're not going to start with Ryan Nagel, but that's who's going to be on the screen first, because we're just going to talk about how the toxicologist finished. It's a continued cross by Yannetti. He basically talks about how the blood draw was not good. She doesn't know about the equipment, how they poked the holes, just trying to poke some doubt into the draw itself. No confirmatory testing. They don't give a precise number. They give a range, which is like what they do, but he kind of tries to make it seem nefarious. And she could have had more drinks after 12:45, which is a big deal. There's like a law school problem. A guy gets into an accident, runs in the house and starts chugging wine or chugging beer or taking shots. How do you prove what the BAC was and when, right? That's really important. So he asks those questions. I don't think there is any evidence she had drinks after 12:45, but we'll see. And she didn't perform any calculations on Higgins, Alberts, etc., which again is not relevant to whether or not Karen Read committed a crime. It's just to, and that to me is an example of lawyers looking at what the public is saying, realizing people have a very strong opinion about drinking and driving, realizing that opinion is going to go against Karen Read, but trying to also make it go against the witnesses, especially the ones that they think are the third-party culprits. So when it comes to asking that question, it was objected to, it was sustained. It's not in evidence, but will it make the jury think? If you're just going to hold drinking and driving against somebody, it's not just Karen Read who was drinking and driving that night. Then he gets to Ryan Nagel. And Ryan Nagel, as we know, his testimony is what happens after 12:30-ish, 12:23, whatever. We'll talk about the data being different. I don't know why. And just to put a bow on the toxicologist, to me, not the most important part of the case, to me, it is pretty clear Karen Read had too much to drink that night. If this was a DUI case, I think they're building towards beyond reasonable doubt guilt potentially for that. To me, I think most of the jurors are going to think negatively about how much she drank that night and drove. Do they think that's a precise BAC number? Can I poke a million holes on taking the blood at 9 o'clock for a 12:45 time, which is wrong in their timeline anyways, and not knowing whether or not she had drinks afterwards? There's all sorts of issues with that. But to me, I do think the jury will look negatively on Karen Read because of the drinking and driving. That is not enough to prove she hit John O'Keefe with her car, obviously. That's why the other science and data still needs to come. So that's part of the toxicology stuff. But it was kind of a weird turn to Nagel, because I thought we just heard from, Kerry Roberts, Jen McCabe. We heard from the toxicologist. Why not the Greek couple? Why not some of the other people like Higgins and the other Alberts to talk about more of what happened at the waterfall, who went where, who left with who, when they left, building that timeline. Instead, we're now jumping back. It's almost like a TV show that's like going back and forth and back and forth. And while I absolutely think Brennan is doing a much better job with tighter witnesses, getting them on the stand, getting them to testify what you need them to testify to, and then getting them off, I think that that's important, but you don't want to lose the effect and the proof of the timeline of what happened. And now it's starting to get confusing to me. Okay. Just to me. I'm not as smart as you guys are, but the timeline is really getting confusing to me, because I know we've heard 12:31/12:32. We've heard 12:45 that the Commonwealth gave as the time. We heard after 12:31, John's phone still has to be manually opened or closed. We know Karen Reed. Well, we don't know yet. Karen Reed gets back to John's house 12:36. And now we get to this testimony. And this testimony by Ryan Nagel, I understand people are saying the data on his phone said he texted Julie at 12:23 saying, I'm here. And I know that Julie Nagel says she doesn't see Karen Reed's car, I think, when she comes out. That is all stuff going to come in the future. And if she was only there 5 minutes, maybe he left by 12:28. How was John O'Keefe out of the car at 12:28? There's just so many questions. And I know there's people on Twitter and people all over the place that can explain to me, oh, this is so easy. It makes complete sense. I just really don't understand how you can say this timeline is lining up. And for people to say, oh, he's just guesstimating 12:30 to 12:35, that's not good for the Commonwealth witness. And it's really not good when it doesn't match up with the timeline and it doesn't match up with the data when you said all of that is going to point to her guilt. And this timeline is still one of the most important pieces of evidence in this entire trial. So let's take a listen to some clips from Nagel's testimony. He says he got to Fairview around 12:30. Okay. I guess 12:23 is around 12:30. I would agree with that. But that inconsistency, by the way, people can say it's not a big deal. And maybe it won't be a big deal to the jury. Maybe it won't be a big deal to the jury, the 12:23 to the 12:30. But the defense can get up there and say, reasonable doubt can come from the evidence, the lack of evidence, or the conflicts in the evidence. Because conflicting testimony and conflicting evidence is not good for the prosecution that has to prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt. It is their burden. That's why these inconsistencies are a big deal. Okay, he saw Karen's car coming, so they get there at basically the same time. And she didn't stop at the driveway. She was in front of him the whole time. He didn't say anything about a white Jeep being there. Her brake lights were on. They turned off, so she moved up a little bit. He asked Julie Nagel, if she wanted him to take her. Julie asked if Ryan wanted to come in. He said no. He waited about 2 minutes before Julie came out. They talked for about 5 minutes, and then she went in. He saw the Lexus. There was a dome light on. He saw a woman in the front seat with hands at 10 and 2. And he said someone else could have been in the car, but he didn't see. And Brennan's like, well, how can you get the dome light to turn on? He's like, you can push the button or you can open a door. Driver's side door wasn't open. So kind of indicating a reasonable inference from this evidence would be John O'Keefe was standing outside the passenger door, I guess, which Nagel could have seen him, could not have seen him. But let's listen to his explanation at the end of direct from Brennan of what he saw, what he didn't see.
If I could show Exhibit 3, Mr. Nagel. Sir, do you recognize that address?
Yes, sir.
And what is that address?
It's 34 Fairview Road.
Do you recognize the flagpole?
Yes, I do, sir.
Thank you. When you drove by and you said you saw a woman sitting in the front and the dome light was on, did you see anybody else in the car?
No, sir.
Were you looking for anybody?
No, sir.
Could there have been somebody else in the vehicle at that time?
It could have been, yes.
Could there have been someone standing outside the door?
Yes, it could have been.
When you saw the person, were you studying the person?
To me, that's like borderline speculation, but I guess, is it possible somebody was there and he didn't see it? I guess, sure, it's possible. But again, you don't want to have a lot of answers like that if you're a prosecutor. You don't want a lot of it's possible, maybe, could have been, should have been.
No.
How long of a time did you have to take a glimpse of that person?
5-10 seconds, maybe.
Okay. Now, I want to ask you some questions about the entire time you were parked at the foot of the driveway until the point that you left Fairview. From when you first stopped at the driveway at Fairview until the point that you left and were no longer in front of that property, did you ever see any person get out of that SUV that was in front of you?
No, I did not, sir.
Did you
So
ever?
now he's going to, it's like Brennan's going to really dig in and be like, you never saw anybody get out, right? You didn't see anybody on the lawn. You didn't see anybody walk to the house. But the questions you were just asking before were about somebody not being in the car. I didn't see anybody in the car. They could have been standing by the car. It's like, well, you didn't see them there either. So all this timing is lining up just perfectly, which is possible, right? That John O'Keefe's getting out of the car as Nagel's driving by to where he can just see Karen Reed, perfect enough to see it's Karen Reed with the dome light on, but not enough to see John O'Keefe there, not enough to see John O'Keefe walking anywhere in the yard, not long enough, Again, John O'Keefe could have walked straight to the door. He could have stood there and yelled at Karen. He could have done a million things, right? So I'm not saying she for sure would have driven up and backed into him. Again, doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Julie Nagel's also walking back to the door of the house before Ryan Nagel walks out. Did she see anybody on the outside of the car? A lot of questions with these fact witnesses. And that is the difficult part for me. And it's also, and maybe Hank Brennan's calling some of these witnesses so that the defense doesn't. But if the Commonwealth can prove John O'Keefe was hit by Karen Reed's vehicle based on the math and the science and the data, how the light lines up with the scratches and how you would expect that damage and you would expect that injury if that car hit that man and he came to his final rest, hitting his head on frozen ground. If you can prove that, maybe this isn't as important, but when you call it in this way, it muddies the timeline for me. Let me know if you guys, there are people that disagree with me. I know they're on Twitter. Are they here? And if they are, explain to me why you don't care. And you don't care makes it sound like I'm being negative about it. Why can you look past these inconsistencies to think that this timeline lines up? That's what I want to know. Now, if you think it's unimportant, then I understand where you're coming from. Is there any more I want to listen to here? Yes.
Ever see anybody, any man, ever cross the front yard towards that home?
No, I did not, sir.
Did you ever see any man ever enter or stand in that front door?
No, I did not, sir.
Did you ever see anybody walk across the front yard to the side door?
No, I did not, sir.
Did you ever see anybody enter that side door other than your sister?
No, I did not, sir.
As you were parked at the driveway the entire time, that generally 5-minute time, did you ever see anybody get out of the SUV and walk down the street towards the driveway?
No, I did not, sir.
Did you ever see anybody walk past?
So just help me out. So what was all the conversation about somebody being outside the car? It's like you just proved somebody could have been outside the car and you didn't see it 2 seconds ago. And now he's testifying fact evidence that nobody ever got out of the car and walked to the door. And maybe I'm nitpicking this as a lawyer because like how I would set up the direct, this just didn't make any sense to me. He did not prove anything helpful to them, I guess, except that a woman was inside the SUV.
Past your truck and up the driveway?
No, I did not, sir.
Did you ever see any person other than your sister outside of those vehicles the entire time that you were at Fairview?
No, I did not, sir.
I have no further questions. Thank you.
Mr. Yannetti?
All right, and that's how he wanted to finish it. Thank you, King Pine. And yeah, it's like I got to come down, right? It was a big meeting. It was a long meeting. I was on, and now I just got to, maybe we'll roll up the sleeves a little and chill a little bit, and just this is going to take as long as it's going to take. It's going to take as long as it's going to take. We're going to enjoy the ride, enjoy the discussion, hopefully learn from each other here. Chris is already gone. He's going to the Know Your Lawyer page. It's fine, Chris. We'll miss you while you're gone. So to me, with this witness, I would not have been pumped about it, but I don't think Hank Brennan was really surprised at what came out. He puts the witness up, he gets his shots in, and then goes. And I think that's the smartest way to prosecute this case with a lot of issues. Cross by Yannetti, driver of the black SUV, when he saw them driving, right? Because this is the question. In reality, this guy, Ryan Nagel, should never be able to testify to how Karen Reed was driving. But because the prosecution wants to get out, well, I saw her coming towards us. She turned before we turned, and I watched her pull past the driveway and watched her park here and move her car here. It's like, well, then I might as well ask you. She was driving safe, right? She wasn't driving recklessly. So how important is the drunk driving? And don't clip that. Obviously, drunk driving is horrible. But when we're coming to, did she accidentally hit John O'Keefe and not know it? That would not be in line with what she was doing just minutes earlier, navigating the road safely, according to Ryan Nagel. Took a couple minutes for Julie to come out. Previously testified, he talked to Julie for over 5 minutes. He said it was less than 5 minutes, and then he doesn't deny that it could have been 5 minutes. Then they left. He was closest to the Lexus to look and see. And then we get Yannetti talking to him about what he saw there in the Lexus here.
Seats in the front driver's
I
compartment.
couldn't
correct?
see past the woman.
Well, you only saw one
I only
person.
saw a woman. Sorry to interrupt you. Yes.
No problem. It allowed you to see into that front compartment.
Yes.
All right. And you saw one person inside the car at that time.
Correct, sir.
It was a woman with long hair in the driver's seat, correct?
Correct, sir.
And she looked like she was alone.
Yes.
You didn't see anybody else in the SUV.
No, I did not, sir.
You certainly didn't see a 6'1" man in the SUV in the passenger seat, correct?
Correct, sir.
In fact, you saw that the passenger seat was empty.
Correct.
What? He just told Hank Brennan that there could have been somebody in the passenger seat. And then he just confirmed it was empty. This guy, to me, just seems like he's trying to answer the best he can remember, and he doesn't remember a ton, and he's kind of just going to agree with the lawyers say. There's been a couple witnesses like that. But he just confirmed nobody in the passenger seat. Don't you think no one seeing him in the car or a body is huge reasonable doubt? Yes, but it's reasonable doubt that the Commonwealth is going to have to explain. The Commonwealth needs to exclude every reasonable doubt, and you better believe that is one. They have brought that up with their own witnesses. That's the problem with this case. Brennan doesn't have a choice. There would almost be no witnesses if he wasn't going to bring up a witness that had something bad to say for them. That's the tough part. That is the tough part.
The woman in the past.
That's all we needed from the cross. And again, I put a note in here that like all these people are saying the data is so different. The data paints a better picture for the Commonwealth. Well, the data can say one thing. If the witnesses say another, we've had Ian Whiffen say data's not perfect. It can be off. It can show 227 when it's 607 or whatever time it showed. So what is it? That's why a closing argument needs to pound reasonable doubt. They over there, those guys, they've got to prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt. Did they prove it? Mar said, I did not watch the first trial or followed the case before. So far, the prosecution has made me curious, but not quite convinced. I think this is a totally fair comment. So far, I do think they've made it curious with Karen's comments, with the drinking and driving, with them talking about the piece of metal sticking out, the pieces of taillight. But as we get into the investigation, as we dig in deeper, continue to let me know how you see the case. Can the jury tell the judge they already unanimously have their doubt and stop the trial, or does it continue? Absolutely not, Brian. The Commonwealth has a right to put on their case. They do not have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt day one. They don't have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt day two. When they close their case in chief, they need to have proven this case beyond a reasonable doubt. And if the defense brings up reasonable doubt in their case, they can have rebuttal to do the same. But they have the right here now to prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt. We can't call it, because if that was the case, any case we'd call day one, because the defendant is supposed to be presumed innocent as soon as they show up for trial. All right, next witness, redirect by Brennan. We're going to listen to a little bit of this. How does he rehab the fact that Ryan Nagel just testified in this manner?
Sir, you mentioned you were at that address around 12:30,
That is correct, sir.
and you offered us that you were there for about 5 minutes.
Yes.
Do you know the exact time you left?
No, not off the top of my head right now, no.
Was it around that time?
Yes, sir.
Would it be fair to say you don't have certainty whether it was 12:35, 12:32, 12 o'clock?
It's probably before 12:35, roughly between 12:30 and 12:35.
So again, I thought Brennan kind of got the answer he needed, but he said right around there. And Nagel again says between 12:30 and 12:35, which to me makes it seem like he's not purposely lying for the Commonwealth, because he could say, oh yeah, it could have been even before 12:30, right? I mean, he could say, he could give himself more leeways in the I don't remembers, and he really did, because that 12:30, he just confirmed it was probably between 12:30 and 12:35, or even when he said it's probably before 12:35, still doesn't fit the timeline. Doesn't make sense if he's being hit at 12:31 or 12:32.
You could still see the ground, given
Yes.
the weather.
Yes, sir.
Was there snow starting to fall?
Just starting?
Had you been outside earlier that night?
Yes, sir.
In the ground that you could see, do you know how hard it was?
Say that again,
The
sir?
ground.
Ground, yes.
Do you know if it was soft or hard?
Like the road?
The ground, the grass.
The ground you could see. Do you know how hard it is? How do you know how hard ground is from looking at it? Right? I've been in lots of fairway bunkers and bunkers by the green, and they look like nice sand. And then when I go stand in there and I realize how hard they are and packed down, that's how you know, by feeling the ground, not by looking at it. Come on. But they get frozen ground in later. Don't worry.
The line.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it was a cold night, so I mean, I assume it's hard.
Around that time, around 12:30 when you left, was there inches of snow?
No,
On
there's
the
no
ground?
inches of snow, no. I could still see the grass coming through the snow. I mean, it's just like a coating.
You could still see the bare ground.
Correct, sir.
When you saw that SUV in front of you for the time that you were there, that 5 minutes, did you ever, and you said that you saw brake lights at times, did you ever see at that point missing parts of its taillights?
No, sir, I wasn't observing the vehicle like that.
When the taillights
I wasn't observing vehicles or the vehicle like that. He could have said no, taillights were fine, but he didn't. So I'm going to try to point out. I mean, I think he's just doing the best he can. And I don't know anything about this guy. I don't know his background. People may say, oh, he's in with the Alberts, in with the I don't know. But he could have forced better testimony for the Commonwealth, and he didn't.
were on, when the brakes were on, what color was the glow?
Red, sir.
Did you ever see a missing piece where it was white instead of red?
No, sir.
And if anybody says, well, he couldn't change his testimony from the last time, why not? Why not? When we've looked at some of the other stuff happening.
Over near the flagpole where you saw this SUV, did you see any human being, any person lying on the ground near the flagpole?
No, sir.
When you drove by the SUV, you said you couldn't see past the woman. Could you see inside the SUV when you drove past?
Repeat yourself.
When you drove past the SUV, you saw a woman in the driver's seat?
Yes, that's correct.
You didn't see anybody else?
No.
Do you know if anybody else was in that SUV?
Could have been.
I'll allow it.
It could have been.
From when you were driving by the SUV and you could see inside the driver's seat and saw the woman, could you see on the other side of the SUV if there was anybody standing on the other side of the SUV?
No, sir.
Was there anything obstructing your view as you drove by and saw the woman to prevent you from seeing on the other side of the SUV?
The woman and the vehicle itself.
You mentioned that there was a dome light on in the SUV.
Yes, sir.
Was the driver's side door open?
No,
when you
sir.
drove by?
No, sir, it was closed.
Can I have exhibit 16, please? The entire time walking across this man at any point,
No, sir. I've never
Walking.
seen- Oh, sorry.
walking across the yard, going to a door, or entering the house the entire time you were there.
Objection.
Sustain.
No, sir, I've never
That
seen
means
that.
you don't.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Sorry.
Can you take that down, please? And after you left, you never went back that night, did you?
No, sir.
Thank you.
We're going to listen to Yanetti's redirect, but Dana said, was John already in the house when this couple pulled up behind Karen? I have no idea. We have no evidence of that, right? Because everybody says he wasn't in the house. If you want to say the stairs, if walking up and down stairs, that was before this timeline that Nagel is putting together. John said, yeah, I think you're just looking too far into these witnesses. Makes me think John didn't go into the house. Not extremely important. Roll up them sleeves, my guy. You are with your peeps. Thank you, John. I mean, you don't have a witness to the actual event, but you have a witness saying he was there, looking at the crime scene right in the time period where the event happened. That's important. That is important to me. I don't know. I mean, that is important to me. Mad and drunk. Is it possible she did this and not remember, but Karen seems too arrogant for me? Anything is possible, but they need to prove it, right? Welcome to the episode, season 2. I'm not a drinker, so to me, they all have a lot of alcohol. However, evidence says he wasn't hit by a car. The timeline doesn't match. And again, you're never going to hear me say it's okay for all the drinking and driving that was going on that night. But that doesn't prove the crimes we're here about at trial. I hope you were my first message sent during the delay gets read, but Dupes deserves 2 shout outs for her first Mother's Day anyway. Love you, P. The turtle, as a man who had a woman mad at him, I have to say this. Her voicemails sound extremely authentic. Are there experts that dissect speech patterns? Well, we're going to get to an officer later that is dissecting. I can't remember what he called it. I have it in my notes, but he was like, oh yeah, I'm really good at looking and seeing if people are suspicious. Okay. Here's reader Recross, by Yanetti, who wants to confirm what Ryan Nagel did and did not see.
On those issues, sir, you just testified on cross-examination before Mr. Brennan stood up again that you saw that the passenger seat was empty. Do you remember that?
Yes.
You're not changing that testimony?
No, I'm not changing that. No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was it. He's like, hold on a second. Just so nobody gets confused about what you just said on redirect, you're not changing your testimony about nobody being on the passenger seat, right? No, I'm not changing that. Okay. And then he sat down. Yanetti did what every good lawyer should do once you get the very important point across. Sit down. You don't need to keep asking questions because you feel like you got him. Okay, next is Witness 15, Heather Maxon, Ryan Nagel's ex-girlfriend, saw the SUV, male and female in the car, female driving. Julie was the only person she saw walking down the driveway that night, so she didn't see John O'Keefe walk in the car either. Female in the car had dome lights on, didn't see anyone else in the SUV. Never saw anybody walk across the road or anything like that. Again, I didn't see how she was helpful to the Commonwealth at all. Yanetti did cross. not really paying attention to what was going on. I think she may have even said I was on the phone, focused on the Julie situation, not really focused on the Lexus. Okay. Next witness, Sarah Levenson. She explains who was all at Fairview. We're going to get a lot more into that as the adults start testifying. And I know these people are all adults, but even, when I'm with my parents or their friends, it's like the kids and the adults. And we're going to learn a lot more about who was inside, but she talked about it. Colin Albert showed up. Julie Nagel leaves at some point, comes back in. She was gone 5 minutes or less. It was dusting snow when she was walking out, which is very important because she left after John O'Keefe was allegedly hit by a car and left in the snow. She just looked down at the ground to make sure she wasn't going to slip. Alan Jackson crosses this time. Yannetti and Jackson are kind of splitting the fact witnesses. Longtime friends with Brian Albert Jr. and Jackson and Yannetti are going to get into that as much as possible. And their whole family never met the dog. Doesn't know if it's because Chloe wasn't good with strangers, but she never met her. And then they talk about when she left. Where did she look? That's what Jackson focused a lot of his cross on. It wasn't very long, but we're going to listen to it here.
Correct.
You can see to the left, the driveway. You can see to the right, over toward the flagpole. Nothing obstructing anything, correct?
Correct.
There was a light dusting of snow at the time when you left just after, what time was it? 12:45, 1?
Probably 1:30,
1:30.
1:45. Yeah.
So you leave at 1:30, there's still just a light dusting of snow on the ground?
Yes.
The yard is flat.
Yes.
You can see all the way out to the flagpole.
Yes.
You didn't notice anything unusual at that time when you looked up toward the flagpole walking out that front door?
I didn't notice anything. I wasn't looking out at the flagpole, but yes.
You're looking in that direction. When you walk out the door, obviously you're standing, walking out of the door toward the front yard, correct?
Correct. But as I stated, I was looking down at my shoes in front of me.
Okay. Obviously, then you have to, at some point, you have to look up to see where you're going. You have to turn left to go to the driveway. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Then you walk over and walk parallel to the yard again to walk over to the car. Correct?
Yes.
As soon as you walked out of the stoop, you had to figure out where the stairs were to make sure you don't fall down the stairs, right?
Yes.
But you're still looking up, like normal, correct? At some point.
Most likely.
My question is, you didn't see anything unusual in the yard, did you?
No.
The front yard was at least relatively, I know it was dark out on Miss Levenson, it was relatively lit by the interior windows as well as lights on the outside of the house.
Yes.
So she says yes, but on redirect, that's what Brendan kind of focused on, that over by the flagpole, the lights weren't really illuminating that. She's like, oh no. Nobody from law enforcement talked to her for 9 months until she finally talked to who? Former Trooper Proctor. So I was wondering at this point, has Brennan said Proctor's name? He had to have, right? He had to have said Proctor's name at some point. But it's very telling when the defense says Proctor's name each time in a situation to show how intricately involved he is in this case, and they're smart to do it. Because if they didn't, I do think Brennan is doing a good job of kind of just hiding him over on the side. But that's why the defense really needs to mention Proctor interviewed. Proctor showed up. Proctor gathered the evidence. Proctor did this. Proctor did that. Proctor was the lead investigator. That's important. Next witness is Katie McLaughlan, EMT paramedic, education experience, said she didn't really know these people. And then she gets into some of the statements Karen Reed made.
Trying to gather the information with her.
Did she say anything to you in addition to the typical background information that you would try to obtain from somebody?
Yes.
What did she say?
Well, I asked another question. Once we had come to a stop, I asked if there had been any significant trauma that happened that preceded this. And she answered with a series of statements that she repeated. I hit him. I hit him.
Was there some sort of trauma that preceded this? Very weird question to ask a layperson. I don't know that a layperson would put two and two together, that when you're asking about what kind of trauma caused this, which we do in PI, personal injury cases, it's like it was a traumatic event that was a car accident that caused this injury. Usually it's like, did something happen to cause this? So she says traumatic event, and Karen Reed responds to the traumatic event question, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. Now, to me, if this was the consistent allegation from all the first responders, I think that's pretty good. I think that's much closer to a confession than anything else has sounded, which was more like hysterical, although she did say she was hysterical at the time. Jackson's going to get into that in cross. But Nuttall was like, I was asking for basic information, and she just blurted out, I hit him, which sounds more like a question, things like that. Which gets us into the I hit hims are completely inconsistent. We're going to get into what that is and what it's not. Now, one explanation, maybe she said I hit him 50 times. So each person heard a different 3 times. But now, when Jackson was playing the video, I was kind of like, I don't get it. I don't get it. Like, how am I even supposed to tell what's going on in this video? I see a yellow jacket. But that's why Jackson is having them point out in the video when it happened, because that is completely inconsistent. And they're all standing around at different places. So they all couldn't have heard it at the same time. And you have the McCabe and Kerry Roberts testimony where they would have heard it multiple times. They would have heard it when she said it to McLaughlan, right? And when she said it to Nuttall, if she said it 50 times, which they didn't necessarily say. She also invokes multiple other people she says will confirm it was said when she said it was said.
There was a woman next to us who told her to calm down, stop talking, calm down, you're hysterical. So she repeated, I hit him. And a police officer asked her, said, you what? And she repeated it again, I hit him. And the officer then signaled for his sergeant to come down to the scene or down to where he was.
When she first told you that she had hit him, you said there was another woman next to her. Did you know who that woman was?
Not at the time.
Do you now know who that woman was?
I do.
And who was that?
Ms. Jen McCabe.
Did you know Ms. McCabe at that time?
No,
Do you know her personally now?
no,
Are you friendly or friends with her in any way?
no.
You mentioned that when the defendant said, I hit him, Ms. McCabe was trying to intervene.
Yes, it appeared that way.
What did it appear she was trying to do?
Trying to get her to calm down, to stop talking. It appeared that she was.
Did Ms. McCabe interject verbally?
Yes,
After Ms. McCabe interjected and the defendant made those statements about hitting him, did you persist in getting more information, asking to clarify what she meant by I hit him?
no, I did not.
Why not?
A few reasons. I felt at that point, given the situation and how disturbing, and it was a very emotional situation, the woman was very upset. I didn't feel comfortable pushing and asking for more. I just didn't think that it was the right time for that. And it was also really not my place at that point. And I feel like that was something that the police that's more their role.
Asking follow-up questions about what she meant by I hit him, would that have helped your diagnosis and treatment of the man in any way?
It could have.
Yes. Thank you for at least saying that. Of course it could have. Did you hit him with the front? Did you hit him? Well, that could have gone RI. Could have gone to pause. Did you hit him going? How fast were you going when you hit him? Did he fly? Did he land hard? Did he roll? All sorts of things could have really, really helped figure out how these injuries were caused to help John O'Keefe. Then I thought it was a good move by Brennan to soften the blow of Caitlin Albert, her relationship, whatever you want to call it, high school together, not close friends. Jackson spent a ton of time on it. I did not personally think it was overly effective what he was trying to do. Now, Judge Cannoni definitely with the assist to Brennan there, not letting Jackson get into quite as much as he was allowed to get into the first trial, which I think is frustrating to the defense of the case that there are all these connections. But the judge made the decision. I thought Jackson did basically as good as he could have. And we're going to listen to a little bit of him, try to get into it. It was clunky. I didn't think it was worth it at the end. But it's been a common theme, all these people's connections. So I get why he did it.
A lot of harassment and things, that insinuations and stuff that started coming out online. I had said maybe once to them that I was concerned I was being harassed.
My question, Ms. McLaughlan, was before the information was disclosed, which was during the first proceeding.
Objection.
Let's hear the question.
Before that information was disclosed during the first proceeding, in any of your interviews, the proctor or anybody else from the DA's office, did you disclose, from the Massachusetts State Police or anybody from the DA's office, did you disclose, did you volunteer that you had a relationship with people before the first proceeding?
Yeah, I'm saying I told the DA about the harassment and the insinuations. That was before the first trial when I met with them.
How was there harassment and insinuations that haven't been disclosed at the first proceeding?
Because it's out there everywhere on the internet and has been.
Before the first proceeding, Ms. McLaughlan, before you ever testified. That's my question. Do you understand my question?
It's been going on since before the first proceeding.
If you hadn't testified at the first proceeding, at which point it was revealed, how could you have ever suffered any harassment for it? It wasn't disclosed yet, Ms. McLaughlin. Do you understand?
I don't think you understand what I'm saying.
She wanted to make sure the harassment got in this trial. So just a little bit, just a little dabble in it, not as much as the first trial.
Who did you tell at the DA's office?
The relationship that I had with Caitlin Albert had been out there. It had been published and proliferated on the internet. And so that was before the first proceeding.
And who did you tell?
To me, that was all he needed. The relationship between me and Caitlin Albert was out there on the internet. To me, that's all Jackson needed. Then he could have just moved on.
The DA's office about this before the first proceeding.
I don't remember who it was or the meeting, but
Was it Mr. Lowry?
it could have been.
Do you have a memory of that?
Not specifically. I don't remember who it was.
Was it Ms. McLaughlin?
Like I said, I don't remember
Not you,
specifically.
Ms. Laura McLaughlin. No relationship.
Like I said, not specifically.
Let's talk about that initial call to 34 Fairview.
All right, then they get into the call to Fairview. Who was around? Officer Seraph was right there when she said it. He shows the video, points it out, and we're going to listen to her explain a little bit of how this happened, which to me I think is inconsistent with what we've already heard. And if I had to guess, just kind of knowing what happened in the first trial, it's going to be inconsistent with what we're going to hear in the future. And somebody said, do you find it hard to distinguish your thoughts, memories from the first trial of this? I do. I wish I was a juror who didn't see the first trial and remember too much. It's impossible not to, right? We're human beings. We have a brain that remembers things, and we're getting reminded of it as these witnesses testify. And some of it sounds different. Some of it sounds the same. There's some additional information. So it's impossible not to. But that's why I keep trying to say, like, we've got to wait. We've got to understand what this jury is seeing. We've got it. We can compare it, see how the defense is doing, pointing out these inconsistencies. But this is a great comment because we're all going to struggle with a little bit of this if we watch the entire first trial and all of the motions and hearings that have happened since.
I was standing relatively quietly to your right.
Upset when she said that. And what she said was obviously Ms. McCabe was trying to convince her that that was not, you need to calm down. Stop saying that.
Right in front of the police officer who never said he heard her say.
Objection.
You were standing 18 inches, 2 feet from Officer Seraph, correct?
I don't know exactly.
Well, give me an idea. I mean, 2
I-
feet, 3 feet, whatever.
He was standing near me.
And he was standing even closer to my client, wasn't he?
Yes.
At this moment, when you claim to have heard the "I hit him" repeated 4 times, where was Officer Flamati? I'm sorry, where's Firefighter Flamati and Firefighter Nagel?
In the ambulance.
With the doors closed.
Yes.
And the ambulance, this is my ignorance, I'm assuming the engine was running?
Yep.
I'm assuming that there's some sort of heating system inside that ambulance to keep it nice and warm for patients?
Yes.
That was running as well?
Hmm.
Yes?
Yep.
So that door closed, those doors closed. How many feet away, by the way, from where you were looking? How many feet away? How many yards away?
I don't know. We were fairly close to the ambulance.
Further than you and I are from each other right now or closer?
I think closer.
Okay. How about now?
I'm not sure. The ambulance was behind us. I'm not sure how close we were.
At least
So Nuttall and Flamati are inside the ambulance with the door closed, trying to save a man's life with the heat on, engine running, when Karen Reed said, I hit him 3 times. So she had to have said it multiple sets of 3 times, and in areas where other people heard and some didn't, and other people can corroborate and others can't.
a few yards.
Sure.
And those doors are pretty thick, secure metal doors that lock. Is that right?
Yes.
Obviously, when you saw them, I know you don't know what was happening inside the ambulance, but when you saw them, Firefighter Nagel and Firefighter Flamati were engaged in life-saving measures with Mr. O'Keefe, one doing the bag, one doing chest compressions, as they entered into the ambulance, which you did see, correct?
Yes.
When those doors closed, would you presume, from your experience, that those life-saving measures and their focus was on John O'Keefe, that continued?
Yes.
You testified that you went back to the ambulance at some point, and you told Firefighter Flamati and Firefighter Nagel what you claimed to have heard. You told this jury, correct?
I went back to the ambulance after that and I told them what was said and gave them the demographic information that I got.
Okay. So in other words,
So Nuttall said he got it from Karen Reed. She's saying she told Nuttall about the I hit him. And Nuttall was the key witness, first witness, opening statement built around him. The guy that Brennan wanted to put up on a pedestal. You know, the Doogie Howser of EMT paramedics. And this is not consistent with that. Which again, your case is never going to be perfect. People are going to remember things differently. People are going to say things differently. People are going to point out different things. So it's not like the trial has to be perfect, but there are way too many inconsistencies here for me. Then he gets back into the relationship a little bit. Again, I did not think that was overly effective, the Caitlin Albert relationship. You guys can tell me if I was wrong or if you disagree, I should say. Then he gets into who coordinated the MSP or the interview she did with Canton. Was it MSP? Was it Kevin Albert, basically? Did you tell Proctor about the Albert relationship? No. Did Proctor tell you about any relationship he had with people? No. Then he gets to the video, which again, there's a method to the madness, right? And everything's a little bit different. Every lawyer would do things a little bit different, but the defense has a method here to the madness. Is it effective? You guys tell me, are you following? Are you picking up what they're putting down with all the times they're showing the video, asking everybody to point out who's who, where you going, who you talking to, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, you're saying calm down, you're being hysterical.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go ahead and play it. Pause it. So you indicated that this is the point at which, let me leave the lights down for a second. This is the point at which you said my client had just said, I hit him, basically confessing having hit John O'Keefe, correct?
Those are the statements she'd made.
And Officer Seraph is standing right there, right?
Yes.
You see any reaction from him right
So
there?
somebody commented that he should point out where Seraph is. There he is. So he obviously heard it.
I know he turned and told somebody to go get the sergeant. I don't know if that already played. I'm sorry.
Do you see any reaction from him?
He responded, "You what?" And she repeated it again, and then he told someone to get the sergeant.
I know that's what your statement is. I know that's your testimony. I'm asking you about the video. Do you see him reacting right here?
You'd have to play it again. I wasn't looking at that part.
Do you see him handcuff my client?
Oh, no.
Do you see him call anybody over to handcuff my client?
That is a great point. And Priscilla pointed it out. If a cop heard her confess, if this is a real confession, which they're absolutely telling the jury it is, why did no cop arrest her? If she just confessed, why didn't anybody arrest her? Members of the jury, none of the cops thought it was a confession, so why would you in your closing argument? The cops knew exactly what it was. A hysterical woman in hysteria, in a traumatic event, trying to figure out what happened. People are saying things to her. She's asking questions. She's making comments. She doesn't even know what she's saying, which is why she got Section 12 at that point. That was a good point by Jackson.
Client.
He turned to signal to get Goody down here is what.
So they handcuffed her.
No.
They didn't handcuff her.
No.
Even though she just confessed in front of a police officer, according to you.
That's what she said.
I hit him. I did it. That's a confession, correct?
She said, I hit him.
And Officer Seraph just stands there, and my client walks away, correct?
You'd have to talk to Officer Seraph about that.
Oh, we have.
You should.
Mr. McLaughlan,
Okay, so let's move on. Mr. Jackson, I'm not rushing you, but how much longer do you think you'll be?
not long.
Okay, so, okay.
Continue. Now,
I could be.
and according to you, you're writing on your glove.
Yes.
What kind of glove?
So she's now writing on her latex glove. That's where she's keeping notes. I don't know. I mean, okay.
Just a regular latex glove that we use on the ambulance.
You didn't have a notepad?
I probably did. Sometimes it's easier to just write it down on your glove.
Right, you write, I hit him?
No, I did not.
Go ahead and play it. Still appear to be writing something down, looking down at your glove?
I might be looking at it.
Is this also an example of my client being overly hysterical and frantic?
Oh, I wasn't paying attention to her.
You can have the lights up. Whatever it was that you were talking to Miss Reed about, it was important enough that you had a pin out. You were writing things down, correct?
Well, I was still finishing writing down some of the other.
It was important enough.
Yeah.
To write things down. Yes, or no?
Yes, I wrote down some of the things that were said.
Some of the things that were important, correct?
Yes.
For instance, you write down John O'Keefe, that's his name, right?
Right.
You might write down a circle with a slash through it, allergies, no allergies, right?
Right.
You might write down 46, his age.
Right.
You might write down how he was injured, hit by a car, correct?
I did not know that was. Well, I didn't know what those statements meant.
You might write down 3 little syllables. It was just told to you. I hit him, especially if it had been repeated 4 times as you tried, correct?
Yeah, I had that in my head, and I was going to go tell them that.
And you had a pin. Right.
I mean, is it plausible that was quick and easy to write it on a glove. Yeah, but she had a notepad, so why wouldn't you just use the notepad? And then when you hear at the end, she just threw the glove away, so we have no idea what she wrote on the glove. That's a problem, right? Especially from a prosecutor who has a problem with texts being deleted in the Signal app and whatever. That's why we have policies and procedures. Somebody asked, there's so many questions here I have to get to. There are policies and procedures for a reason. The investigation was so poorly done. How can Karen Reed be found guilty for misconduct from professionals? Can Karen Reed be found guilty for misconduct from professionals? So even with a horrible investigation and police not following proper policies and procedures, you can still be convicted. Yes. Somebody else asked, Netwoman. Sorry, I'm here late. Brennan asked Trooper Paul Geller, I think it was Gallagher. Was it Gallagher or Geller? About procedure. Why doesn't that open the door to the expert talk about policy? Well, because Judge Cannoni says it's common sense. And jurors know what general police procedure is. We're going to talk a lot more about this, Netwoman, when we get there. Ashley, why didn't the defense bring up the Jeep to Ryan and Sarah? Either they didn't think it was important enough, or they think Ryan Nagel not mentioning it in his testimony, they're going to be able to argue. They asked Ryan Nagel where things were. He never mentioned a Jeep. I don't know. Laura, did you call Leslie a tool last week? Not unless I was saying a tool to be used, as a lawyer. He's a good tool to use against experts. Thank you for all you do. We appreciate you. Also, in the hospital, when assessing someone for mental health, we go by a decreases of 25 per hour for ETOH. Can they check when he texts his sister, Julie, I'm here, and verify exactly what time he got to the Albert's house? I believe that's like 12:23, 12:24. But are those accurate? There's Waze data. There's all sorts of things that are still questionable. And when did Karen Reed get there? And the prosecution has to line all that up in a timeline. They got to line it up. Make sure it all makes sense. JB, if Colin testifies wearing his Portnoy watch, can the defense ask him if his testimony is sponsored? Can it come up? Absolutely. Absolutely. Because that could be biased. Why are you doing this? Are you doing this for fame? Is that why you're testifying like this? That can absolutely come up. Let's listen to a little more here of this testimony.
Right hand, writing things, correct?
Yeah.
Never wrote that down.
I wasn't going to write that statement down on the glove. I remembered that and I went back to the ambulance and told them.
You didn't memorialize that statement on any note that we have, correct?
No.
You didn't memorialize that statement on any glove that you were wearing, correct?
No.
Whatever you wrote down on that glove, where's that now?
Yeah, I don't have it, obviously.
I know how obvious it is. What'd you do with it?
You just scratch everything out and you throw out the glove.
Just threw it away.
Julie here said, it's extremely common to write on a glove. I wrote on my arm all the time when I worked in the hospital. I understand. I can understand how that happens in emergency situations. Seems like she would have written down the way he got hurt too. But also, if you have a notepad, that would be better. I don't mean this to be like negative to you, Julie, because I understand in an emergency situation, trying to save somebody's life, she wasn't really doing that at that point. He's already in the ambulance. But documentation is important, and it really helps with medical diagnosis, treatment, legal cases. And I think that it's better to not write on a glove or your arm. I will say it's not as bad as red solo cups and the leaf blower and some other things we're going to see, but I don't think it's great personally.
Away.
Mhm.
Is that right?
Yes.
Is that yes?
Yes.
So we don't know what was actually on or not on that glove, do we?
I didn't write those words down on that glove.
As we stand here, we don't know what was or wasn't on that glove.
Name, date of birth, no meds, no history, no allergies. And then I wasn't writing that statement down on the glove. I went back to the ambulance and just reported it.
And importantly, it was important enough, as you say, to go back and report the statement, but not important enough to write it down with that pen very conveniently in your right hand, correct?
It's not about importance. I was relaying that information to the ambulance verbally. I didn't need to write it down.
And she didn't write it down. Gladys said, you missed a very important part of Levenson. PB&J talk was in the driveway, not while driving past the flagpole, and that came out indirect. Yes, another inconsistency. I've got to kind of pick my spots, right? Because we're listening to 8 hours. I'm trying to get it into an hour. I've done horribly at it. Probably more likely an hour and a half. Hit the like button if you guys are ready for overtime. We're about 10 minutes from being at an hour. We're definitely not going to finish this in an hour. On redirect, Brennan gets back into the Caitlin Albert situation and relationship and how it's not a problem. And she also said Kevin Albert, she doesn't know who he is. She doesn't think he had anything to do with setting it up. And Proctor didn't say that Kevin Albert set up your interview. So he did say Proctor's name there, I guess. All right, before we get to Gallagher, I'm going to hit some more questions here. Peter, someone in the courtroom today reported that the jury is young. Oldest person is probably 30-ish. What do you think about that? I really would have to know the background. I don't know. You think younger people more likely to believe in conspiracies, or older people maybe less likely to hate drinking and driving? I don't know. I think maybe more understanding of volatile relationships. I don't know, because I feel like every age group deals with a lot of those things. So I don't know. The background, I think, is important to couple with the age. Do you think that the Commonwealth is failing overall thus far? If so, why? I feel like the Commonwealth is doing a decent direct, then lose all credibility during cross. I think that Brennan is creating a simple story for the jury. And if they just ride with him, I do think it's possible that they think he's doing a good job. Because we know more about the case, we know what's coming, we know about the timeline, the details are really messy to me. That's to me. Miss Leslie, Peter, been watching since Depp v. Heard. Is Judge Cannoni overly restricting of Jackson's questions? Feels like she sustains 90% of his objections. I would say yes, but not like in a crazy way. Like, I think that she's definitely pro-prosecution in this case. Most judges are. I would say she is slightly more pro-prosecution so far in this trial, in front of the jury at least, with how she's calling balls and strikes. Was Sarah asked about when Matt McCabe exited the vehicle to go back into the house? Did Matt go around the front or the back of the car? I don't remember that specifically. Ben, Peter, help explain to me. I can only imagine where this is going. Defense says police are bumbling fools, but also want us to believe they mastermind a multi-agency frame job, including these civilians, and nobody leaks it. Come on, guys. I think that it's a good point. I think that it's possible that there are some masterminds using the bumbling idiots, like the useful idiot. Somebody was just called a useful idiot that I know the other day online. It was pretty demeaning. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how they would explain it. But here's the point. The defense doesn't have to prove conspiracy. So that would be how I would explain it to you is, if I'm the defense, I'm not trying to prove to Ben that there was a conspiracy. I'm trying to prove there is so much reasonable doubt in this case. How can you convict a woman of taking a man's life based on what's been presented before you? Katie, how do you think Victoria George will play into the trial behind the scenes? Can multi-lawyers do closing? And she says, I was in your shoes. No, she absolutely can't say I was in your shoes. It depends on the judge if they allow him to split closing, usually not on the defense side. I think she's helping behind the scenes, saying like how this comes off to the jury potentially. Jane, how hard is it not to go tit for tat with a snarky witness? It is incredibly hard. But you know where you learn this? As a young lawyer. And you know where I learned this best? Was in mock trial, where lawyers that are also on other mock trial teams are the witnesses for those teams, and lawyers make the worst witnesses. Actually, no, they don't. Law students make the worst witnesses because we think we know everything when we're in law school, and it's horrible. And I fought with them a couple times, and the judges were like, during practice rounds, don't do that. Looks bad for you, the lawyer. And they also looked at the witness and said, don't go too far either. But that's difficult. Boston, but as you grow, you realize how important it is to not do that. If the other agency stops this charade and all charges are dropped, Karen Reed found innocent, can Karen Reed sue everyone for slander, including McAlbert's, Commonwealth, MSP, and TOC? No, not necessarily. There'd have to be so much more than just the charges being dropped. If she said I hit him, wouldn't the EMT ask, how did you hit him? With what? In order to provide appropriate care and at least report it. Yes. How fast were you going when you hit? By the way, it's not uncommon. I've seen it in a million run reports, police reports that happens at car accidents and truck accidents all the time. And they ask for the data right there, basically. Peter, I didn't watch every bit of the first trial, but did this witness say Karen said she hit him in the first trial? I don't know which witness you're talking about, but if it was Kate, this witness that's in front of you, yes. How can he say he didn't see the passenger side interior, but he could see no one was standing at the passenger door? No, I think he said he couldn't tell if somebody was standing at the passenger door, but he knows nobody was walking across the lawn to the front door of the house, I believe was his testimony. Why not ask questions after she says she hit him? EMT and Jen focused on John O'Keefe, yet didn't ask more info when they hear he was hit. Hit with what? When, where? Try to jog her memory. It could help with treatment. Seems like a lot of us think the same way there. Dominic, can you remind me why they are not allowed to bring in Colin Albert this time? Could the door open up with later testimony? I think it could. He's not able to be pointed at and then put in extra evidence of his, fighting and stuff like that came in the first trial, because there's just not enough connection to him with the timeline and the crime, according to Judge Cannoni. All right, let's get to Gallagher. He was the supervisor. Lank and everybody kind of reported up to him. He was the highest ranking officer. Lights were on, but no sirens because the sirens are just for traffic. He knows the general area where John O'Keefe was found. And he knew who he was, but he didn't never necessarily meet him. And then he reported this, which I thought was interesting. There's explanations for it, so I am going to give some explanations, but I thought the way he said it was interesting. And this could absolutely be nitpicky.
The snow was an icy snow. In the wind, you had to actually talk loud to be heard. Somebody right next to you, and it was your typical New England blizzard, basically.
At this point, did you have any position as you assessed the area, whether this was a criminal investigation?
When we had no crime at that time.
When you were there, were you looking for anything?
We had no crime at that time. This is post I hit him confession, though. So if officers were there for this confession of I hit him, why don't they think there's a crime? If you hit somebody with your car and they die, even if it was on accident, as we know, it's a crime.
Yes, I was examining the scene.
At that point, did you have any reason to start a criminal investigation?
Not at that time, no.
When you learned that Mr. O'Keefe was found outside, did you go look at the particular area?
Yes.
Can you describe the area that was shown to you where Mr. O'Keefe was found?
Sure.
And again, all of this is described to him, which the defense points out even more. He talks about how no civilians came out, including 34 Fairview. High winds and the elements made the tape in the tent that they used to secure the crime scene basically useless. That's something obviously Jackson's going to talk about. And then he gets into what a great A+ investigation and crime scene work that they did with the leaf blower and the cups. And this is where the investigation starts to get highlighted. And I was wondering how Brendan was going to deal with it. And this is going to give us our first taste of how he deals with how the crime scene was handled.
Police were not responding.
Did you make a decision to do anything?
Yes.
What did you decide you were going to do?
Since the state police were not responding, I decided to process the area where Mr. O'Keefe was found and try to find out why he had the medical episode he was having.
He tried to process. First off, again, this should be a red flag, a light going off in your head. You knew what caused the medical episode. She said she hit him, right? She confessed, right? So what are you talking about? You're trying to figure out what caused the medical episode. That is confusing to me. Julie said, generally use your arm and then you use it to complete the documentation afterwards. It's totally suspect that she didn't write that statement down. Yeah, and she just threw it away without documenting it anywhere. I agree.
If you understood this to be a medical episode,
Actually, sorry. We're going to listen here for a few minutes.
and at that point, you didn't have any information it was a crime scene, why were you taking the time and effort to process the scene under these conditions?
Because that's what we do. Even the hospital, there could be a reason that there's obviously a reason he's there.
Yeah. And you're telling us now that you had the confession. MJ Snow, thank you. Yeah. I appreciate you guys clarifying and adding to this because you guys bring great experience to these conversations. And I always learn a lot hanging out with you guys talking about this too. And there's a lot of, medical, scientific, mathematic, whatever that you guys have a lot more experience than I do, and bringing it to the table is good for the discussion.
I think we had a duty and obligation to check around where he was found and see if there was any explanation to what caused his medical condition.
Did you focus on a particular area when you decided to look around?
I did.
What area were you going to look at?
Where it was pointed out he was found and where the blood pattern was.
Were you thinking about looking in any other areas around that?
Not at that time.
Why not?
We didn't have any reason to. We only had the area where he was found.
And at that point, did you have any idea what caused his injuries?
We had none.
At this point, when you were pointed or you're looking at the area where Mr. O'Keefe was found, was the area getting covered up at all?
Yes, it was.
With what?
Snow.
How quickly?
Very quickly. I believe it was forecasted to come down to 1 to 2 inches an hour, if I recall.
Did you have any idea how hard the ground was at that point?
It was frozen.
Did you have any idea?
It was frozen.
At least he touched it, right? He didn't just look at it and say it was frozen. So at least he touched it if he's going to say it was frozen. Frozen might be a technical term. You could say hard. Lay witnesses are generally allowed to testify about things like that. So I don't really have that big of a problem. Now, to say it was frozen solid is different than to say the ground was really hard, felt like it was frozen, because that is something lay people or officers would be able to testify about. So it is what it is.
I'll allow it.
How deep was the snow covering that frozen ground?
Approximately 4 inches at that time.
When you went to look around the area, did you consider using a rake or a shovel?
I did.
And did you?
I did not.
Why didn't you use a shovel at that point?
I was afraid I would miss something or possibly break something.
So he didn't. So he thought, I don't want to use a shovel or a rake because I could break something, which is the correct thought you should have as an officer before you use a tool to process a crime scene.
What could you break with a shovel?
Anything, glass or anything of that nature.
What was your decision about how you would search that area? What did you want to see?
I wanted to see anything that was possible, whether it was any type of weapon or any type of medical bottle or any reason that he could have come to where he was.
Did you think of a way that you could look below the top of the snow without unresting the scene?
Yes, I did.
And what did you conclude?
Because of the blood, the pink spots, we thought.
Did you go inside the house to look for any weapon or any animal that may have caused the scratches or anything like that? Because a lot of these answers, it's like, yeah, that makes sense. You should do that. But why didn't you do X, Y, and Z with that same exact thought process?
I thought might be blood. I thought a leaf blower would be the best method because I have seen it used and to remove light layers of snow, and it can be controlled.
And after having seen that before and making that decision, what was the benefit of a leaf blower over a shovel?
I wasn't going to miss anything with a leaf blower. Much better control.
And control, tell us what your intention, what was your hope with the leaf blower?
Much better control in windy, northeastern storm weather. I am not a snow expert. You'll never hear me say I'm a snow expert. Not a cop. I don't understand how that's the correct form to gather anything or to process anything. I don't get it.
Clear the area, controlled, slowly, so any potential evidence of what happened to Mr. O'Keefe wouldn't be lost.
Did you have a leaf blower with you?
Did not.
So what did you do?
Sergeant Good volunteered to go get the leaf blower. Get a leaf blower.
Did you remain at the scene?
I did.
And during
I literally put down, oh, you can send somebody to get tools that you need, but Jackson's going to hammer that and cross.
this time, you still have no information that it's a crime scene?
We had no information on the crime at that time.
Did Sergeant Good come back with a leaf blower?
He did.
Did you try to get any other items to help you?
Not that I recall.
Okay. When Sergeant Good came back with the leaf blower, did you use it?
I did.
Was it successful?
Very.
Tell us what you did.
I started with low speed and began whisking away the snow. And then I saw how it was uncovering those pink spots, were becoming brighter red. So I verified it was frozen or coagulated blood at that time. And so out of the abundance of caution, I decided that that was something we may want to collect.
Why did you want to collect that?
Just out of abundance of caution, DNA. I expected it to be John's DNA.
And I do think one of the really big things about this whole discussion is how important is the blood. They didn't know it at the time, but not a big part of the forensic case, right? And I would agree with that. But it's also definitely a highlight, an example of a poor investigation. We are over an hour into overtime. Carly said the first thing she does when she turns on one of the videos, hit the like button. It's almost an OCD thing for me. Come on, viewers, be like me. Yes. Let's get this video to 25,000 likes. Do you think we can do it? Because we're here late. I'm just not going to leave the office at any point, I guess, ever. I'm just going to sleep on my couch over there, which I do have a very nice couch, which you guys may have seen in some of the old videos. I used to do some on the couch. But we're hanging. We're hanging until we get through all of Gallagher. So however long that takes, it takes.
I wasn't going to get a second chance at it. It was either collect it or never have it.
Were you making
that? I thought was important too. It's like, yeah, we don't get a second chance at any of this investigation that you guys did. So, and I think that could have been highlighted more on Cross. You said you don't get a second chance. That's correct. In everything you did, not just the leaf blower. The fact that you didn't immediately go inside the house, the fact that you didn't take pictures inside the house, the fact that you didn't investigate inside the house. Had one shot until everything could have changed. House could have been sold. Dog could have been rehomed. House could have been remodeled. Really important things. Yeah, eek geek. You're not the only profession that says that, right? It's a lot of professions, and there's a reason for that.
quick decisions under these circumstances?
Yes.
Did you ask somebody to get a container to put the coagulated blood in?
I ended up getting the containers.
Where did you get them from?
I got them from Lieutenant Gallagher, who lived in the neighborhood.
Did Lieutenant Gallagher ever come over to the scene?
He did not.
Did he work for the Canton Police Department?
He did.
Why didn't he come over to the scene with you?
Because he originally thought the scene was at 32.
Did you ask him to come over to the scene to help you?
No.
Did you expect him to come over to help you?
No.
Did you prefer he not?
Correct.
So when you get the containers, were they plastic cups?
Yes, they were red Solo cups.
And what was the purpose of?
Did you notice how Hank Brennan, the first 5 times he mentions these containers, he calls them containers? And then eventually we find out they're red Solo cups. Now, anybody that watched the first trial and knew that was coming and knew they were red Solo cups. But the jury, on the other hand, hears containers as if this is something normal that you contain things in and don't drink beer out of or water, as I do at home. Containers, containers, containers. And what were those containers? Red Solo cups. And guess what? They were great. And the leaf blower was great.
Using the red Solo cups?
They were plastic. They weren't going to leak. They weren't going to get soggy. They were large. I needed a small sample. My thought was because it was frozen or coagulated, that we could collect it, transport it, and transfer it to the crime lab, who could extract the DNA however they saw best fit.
Do sometimes the crime lab test evidence and sometimes not?
Of course, yes.
Is that your decision?
No.
You were telling us about the leaf blower. Did it serve to excavate the area?
It did.
Did you begin that process?
I did.
And when you did that, did you try to memorialize it?
Yes, I did.
How did you do that?
I had Sergeant Good videotape it.
And I don't want to make light of this. Madison said, I think I didn't realize how bad the investigation was at the beginning of the last trial. Now I'm just sad for John and his family. I agree 100%. But like, you have somebody video you using a leaf blower on the crime scene, and you're like, oh, hey, take a video of this. Look at how good this is working. It's like, really?
Why did you have Sergeant Good memorialize your efforts to excavate the area?
I thought someone may wonder why I decided to use a leaf blower, so I wanted to demonstrate its effectiveness.
I'm going to move to introduce two videos that council has. Can I show?
Yeah, I can't see a snowflake, but I can definitely hear the wind. And by the way, you see snow and things just being blown up. If there were any hairs on the ground, right? Any hairs, frozen or not, those are gone. Like, this is absolute. Now, what's the perfect way? I don't know. Maybe some heat lamps. Maybe you get some cameras out while you're doing stuff so you can see if anything moves. Maybe that's why he did this, but he wanted to demonstrate the effectiveness of the leaf blower. This doesn't seem like the best option. Now, I do agree with them. It's a difficult situation. There's no perfect option. So I do agree with them. I do feel for them. I do understand the issue. But Jackson brings up some great points on cross of why you didn't go back to Can PD a mile and a half away and get some tools that were appropriate.
Could you?
Yeah, and that's one of the big questions. Like, a lot of people are talking about, was there snow under him? Was there not? It's another inconsistency. Was it really snowing that much from the time John O'Keefe left to when these officers were using the leaf blower? Why are there inches of packed down snow? I thought somebody said they saw grass under him. It's not tight and consistent. I think Brennan's presentation is tight, and maybe it's going to be form over substance. But the actual evidence and testimony, to me, does not connect like it should. That's just to me. Grace Bay said, isn't any unintended death treated as a homicide? I don't know if I would say every single one is. No.
I'm going to stop at the end of the video so it's a still frame.
It's definitely looked at as could possibly be. And it's not like you just don't care when you're doing this investigation. Absolutely not. So I think your point is well taken. And not one piece of taillight, right? Because that had to be, and the accident reconstruction is going to explain why the taillight's over there, by the shoe. How far did he fly or tumble? How is that possible with his injuries? Those are all very big questions that we're going to give the Commonwealth a chance to prove, but you've got to exclude and eliminate all of those reasonable doubts. All of them. Did Katie say his head was close to the curb? I'm not positive. Lazy L. How can you tell how frozen the ground is? He didn't say how frozen it was, right? He just said it's frozen. If there are 4 inches of snow on top of it, then why was there no spot with less snow? If there wasn't snow under him an hour earlier, the snow was coming down that hard. That's why they keep testifying to it. I guess they're saying there was that much snow that came down, and you can still feel the hard ground through the snow. I think that's probably fair.
That's good right there. Sir, who's the person holding the leaf blower?
That is me.
Did the leaf blower work as you had hoped?
It was great.
You see other footprints.
So this feels like, and I want to try to say this kosher, that you're urinating on me and calling it rain, right? That's what it feels like when you start to tell me how great this investigation was with the leaf blower and the red Solo Cup. It should be, this sucked. This whole thing sucked because we didn't have any perfect tools. Thank God we got enough blood to prove it was John O'Keefe's blood and it was tested and whatever. And then let the defense say whatever they want about the testing of the blood and the vials and forensic, whatever. Let them say whatever they want. But it's like, we were able to get the blood. Was it perfect? No. Could we have lost things that were there at the crime scene? Absolutely. But the wind was blowing. It was snowing. People were walking around. Leaf blower, red Solo Cup, not great. We don't want to use those. We don't use those in everyday practice. But it did not affect the evidence. It did not affect our investigation. That's how they should have done it. To tell me that this was great, I mean, that would piss me off, frankly. If these were, the cops that investigated things affecting my life. They found the cocktail glass, and then he explains the Stop and Shop bags, which are just as good. They're almost better than evidence bags. Let's listen to this explanation.
Put into a locker, I believe, and temporary evidence. And then it's the evidence sergeant's job to retrieve it. But in this case, we were going to transfer it to the state police.
Was it transferred to the state police at some point?
It was.
Were you part of the transition of that item to the state police?
I was.
And when was it transitioned into who?
It was on February 1st, 2022, and it was to a criminalist from the Massachusetts State Crime Line.
Do you know who the criminalist was?
I don't know the name, no.
Did the criminalist come to your department, or did you bring the item to them?
They came to our department.
In addition to the glass, there was plastic cups with coagulated blood.
That's correct.
What did you do with those cups?
Those were placed in temporary evidence and placed in a refrigerated unit.
To carry them from Fairview to the police department, did you hold the actual cups, or did you put them in something?
No, they were stacked in a bag.
What type of bag?
It was a craft paper bag. In this particular case, we utilized the Stop and Shop bag.
Is that any different than a bag from the police department?
This made of the same paper, craft paper, the same size and dimension, other than Stop and Shop and evidence and probably price. They're basically the same bag.
Why did you use one of those rather than a bag that said evidence on it?
I don't know where that bag came from. I was in a personal car. Sergeant Lank was in a Tundra. If that bag is upside down, you wouldn't know it didn't say evidence on it. I'm not sure.
He volunteered that he doesn't know where that bag came from. Was it used? Was it not? He also had somebody go get a leaf blower, but he couldn't have somebody go get an evidence bag, which again, Jackson is going to hit on. Gingy props. I know the situation was strange in a million ways, and I think that folks did their best. I just don't think it's enough evidence to convict. The Commonwealth pushing so hard just makes it more suspicious. So here's what I'll say. I think if that's what a juror thinks, that's fine. But there are things that happen, like crimes that are committed during hurricanes and during storms, where you just can't prove it. Everybody can do their best, but we just can't prove it. There's evidence that's lost or evidence that's destroyed, and it sucks, and we don't want that. But you just can't prove those crimes sometimes. That's how life is. It's not always going to be a perfect crime scene with a bunch of evidence.
Sure where that bag came from.
And the plastic cups, do you know what happened to those?
Yes, they were turned over to the criminalist as well.
Where did you store them before they were turned over to the criminals?
Temporary evidence in a refrigerator. Temporary evidence in a refrigerator.
Is the refrigerator part of the temporary evidence area?
It is, yes.
Did you bring that piece of evidence, the broken glass, with you today?
Yes.
With the court's permission.
All right, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. There were issues with this, right? Chain of custody, gets into chain of custody a little bit. I do want to show this because I thought this was really interesting. So Brennan brings up the conflict and why they were conflicted off the case. And what he said, I don't know if you guys caught it, but wasn't this interesting?
I had with my chief in the detective sergeant's office.
Was there a decision about Canton's involvement in the ongoing investigation?
There was.
What was that decision?
That we should recuse ourselves from any further investigative interviews.
And why was that?
Because our best detective, his name was Kevin Albert, and he was the brother of the homeowner. And I didn't want any potential bias, whether unconscious or subjective, to be perceived by the O'Keefe family.
Our best detective is Kevin Albert. Our best detective. So that's one of those where it's inappropriate, shouldn't come in. If they knew it was going to come in, they could limit it out. You don't know it's going to come in. You say it, you don't object. Maybe the jury didn't pick up on it. Maybe they did. What are they going to think when he says something like that? Are they going to think, oh, look how connected the Alberts are? Are they going to think, oh, these are really good cops, they would never do anything, like the defense is accusing them of? I don't know, but whether or not Kevin Albert is the best detective in Canton PD is not relevant to prove this crime, and therefore should not come in. All right. Then we get to Jackson's Cross here. You were in charge of all the tools and everything that was done and collected at the scene. You weren't interviewed in this case till April of 2024. He makes that sound nefarious, but not all cops are really interviewed by other cops. So I don't know how big of a point that was. But I thought this was kind of huge. This to me was a big misstep by Gallagher. Who is former trooper Michael Proctor? This answer should have been incredibly easy for me. Should have just been like, yeah, lead investigator. And then we move on. But no, he fights it, and that's a problem.
Logical materials. All of that rested, at least ultimately at the scene, on your shoulders, correct?
Yes, it did.
Isn't it true that you weren't interviewed in this case with regard to anything having to do with this case until April 3rd, 2024, correct?
Yes, we could call it an interview. It's when I met with the prosecutor, yes.
And that was about 2.5 years, nearly 2.5 years after this incident, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Michael Proctor, you know that name?
I do.
Who's Michael Proctor?
He was one of the troopers assigned to investigate the case.
As a matter of fact, he was the lead investigator for the case, correct?
I don't know if he was lead or trooper mechanic. I don't know.
As you sit here, you don't know that Michael Proctor was the lead case agent for.
I know he was one of them, yes.
Okay.
Who do you think Hank Brennan would prefer to be the lead investigator on this case? Sure seemed like Lally wanted to get as much out as he could from Buchanan before calling Proctor. I think everybody on law enforcement on the prosecution team wishes it was anybody but Proctor that was the lead investigator. And this to me was not a good look from this witness.
Do you know that he was the lead investigator assigned to the case?
I don't. I had nothing to do with the DA's office.
Right. I know you didn't.
I don't know how they assign the cases, counsel. I don't know what you want me to say. I can't say what I don't know.
Mr. Gallagher, I'm not asking.
She needs to, just my opinion, right? Because it's focusing in on Karen Reed. I was just listening to this. I didn't even watch it earlier today. I think she needs to try to control her facial expressions in her comments. I do. The shaking the head. Now, I don't know if the jury's with her and they love it, fine. I think she should try to be as reserved as possible. She can, look down. She can, be not happy, but I just don't know. I would be careful with that, especially because we know from the last trial, the jurors were looking at that, and every trial, the jurors are looking at the defendant.
Asking you to. I'm just asking if
I did not know he was lead. I know he was one of the leads.
Okay.
I believe they do it in a tandem, but I'm not sure.
Okay. He may have had a partner, correct?
That is correct, yes.
But it's not unusual to have a lead case agent, the person who's responsible for most of the search warrant writing and the memorialization of and documentation of evidence collection and the movement of evidence and booking into evidence, things like that.
That is correct, but I don't know anything about.
Jackson was able to get some leeway then about what exactly Proctor did. How important was Proctor to this investigation?
Who wrote their affidavits or who logged their evidence in. I wouldn't know that.
You're also familiar with Yuri Buchanan, correct?
I know who he is.
You're also familiar with Lieutenant Tully?
I know, yes.
They're all Massachusetts State Police officers, correct?
Yes, they all are.
Did Michael Proctor interview you before April of 2024?
He did not.
Did Yuri Buchanan interview you before April of 2024?
No, he did not.
Lieutenant Tully interview you before April of 2024?
No, he did not.
Did anybody else from the Canton Police Department, your deputy chief or the chief, interview you formally about your conduct and responsibilities before April of 2024?
I don't understand that question.
Did anybody at Canton PD, separating out Massachusetts State Police, did you sit down at Canton PD and provide an interview with anybody at Canton PD about your conduct at the scene?
What do you mean by conduct?
Going to the scene, collecting evidence, securing evidence, transporting evidence, booking evidence, those kinds of things.
He's like, what do you mean conduct? It's like, well, you did everything at the scene, didn't you? You just testified that you did.
Conduct at the scene, sir.
Yeah, be brief. Yeah, I briefed my superiors, yes.
Okay, other than briefing, was there a formal report written?
No.
Or a formal interview conducted of you?
No, absolutely not.
Tell us when you wrote.
Last comment, it's like, no report, huh? All the stuff you did and no report, no supplemental report, no, I'm going to add this part in my paragraph of what I did, what I saw, what I found. That's pretty mind-boggling to me too.
Your report about what happened at the scene, memorializing what you did at the scene.
I didn't.
You didn't write a report?
About the scene that day at the scene?
Correct, about this
I
investigation.
only did the metadata report. I did not write a report at the scene.
You never, in fact, the fact is you never wrote any report about what happened at the scene, correct?
Correct.
You didn't memorialize that in any formal way on Canton PD letterhead to describe what you did and how you did it at the scene.
No.
Normally, when you report to a scene as a first responder, you would be expected to write a report about that, whatever that conduct is.
I'm not the supervisor, no.
What if you're the ranking person at a scene that ultimately turns into a homicide scene?
Well, we don't know it's a homicide scene at this time. We don't even know there's a crime committed at this time. My
Understood.
responsibilities are to make sure reports are written, not to necessarily write the reports myself. I'm the supervisor. It's
Although-
my job to make sure reports are written, evidence is logged, those types of things.
Under ordinary circumstances, you would
Yeah,
respond
usually, but you're not the one usually with the leaf blower, right?
to a scene as a supervisor, and you would oversee what other people are doing. Which you're
That's
subordinate.
correct.
Can I finish?
Sure.
I don't want to talk over you.
I apologize.
You would want to supervise or oversee what your subordinate officers whatever he or she might be doing or they might be doing, you're going to oversee that. But they're the ones actually conducting the investigation or picking up evidence or doing the interviews, writing those things back.
Correct. Detective Sergeant Lake's investigation. Yes.
So in that circumstance, you wouldn't be expected to write a report because all of that conduct is memorialized by others subordinate to the supervisor, correct?
Correct.
But in this case,
And this is how their lawyers become experts in whatever they're doing. And criminal defense lawyers are usually experts in police procedure, report writing procedure. And we know Jackson was a prosecutor for a long time. They know how this works and what you're supposed to do. And you didn't do it. So you can dance as much as you want. You didn't do it. Usually you don't write reports because you're just standing there while everybody else is working, and everybody that's working are writing reports saying what they did. Fire medic said, I'm no expert, but multiple drops of blood in different areas tell me that person was either being moved or walked while blood was dripping off, not someone that was immediately incapacitated. Where is all the blood? Head lacks bleed, lacerations, I think, bleed profusely. So what's really interesting to me from you guys making these comments, and it's a lot of people saying these types of comments, is the lawyers haven't focused on that yet. Jurors focus on what jurors focus on. It's not always what the lawyers say. It's not always what the lawyers think is important. And that to me is very important. What the jurors think is incredibly important. We are going to jump ahead a little bit here. He said Tully's report was not clear. He was just kind of watching when they went back later. He knew where John O'Keefe was because Lank told him and somebody told Lank, and that's how he found out. So like through 3 levels of hearsay, he got into, you have the evidence bags at Canton PD. You have swabs and things you can gather evidence at Canton PD 1.5 miles away. Would it have worked perfectly? No. But at least if they would have tried that and they would have gathered it in the proper swabs and evidence bags and something went wrong, it's like, that's what we have and that's all we have. More understandable than red Solo cups, Stop and Shop bags, and leaf blowers. We're going to jump ahead here.
how far were you from Canton PD? Approximately.
Mile and a half.
You had your cruiser with you.
I had my personal vehicle with me.
Your personal vehicle. In other words, you were ambulance where you could get from point A to point B if you wanted to.
Yeah, I was the scene supervisor. I wasn't leaving the scene.
Okay. But you also had subordinate folks at the scene that you could have dispatched had you wanted to.
Correct.
They all had cruisers.
Yes, they did.
Or personal vehicles, I'm not sure which.
I'm sorry?
Or personal vehicles, I'm not sure which.
I was the only one with a personal vehicle. Detective Sergeant Lank had a Toyota Tundra pickup truck that is not marked in it, but it's assigned to our detective unit.
So if you wish to, as a ranking officer at the scene, you could have dispatched one or more of those officers to run an errand to go do something in furtherance of the investigation had you wanted to.
Yeah, I actually did that.
Okay, you did. What did
Yes.
you do in that regard?
Remember, I sent Sergeant Good to get the leaf blower.
Got it.
He's like, yes, I can do that. Actually, I did it. See, I did it. I did it right. He's like, okay, for that.
You also know that Canton PD has evidence collection bags at Canton PD.
Yes.
You also know that they have materials and tools to gather biological material, correct?
We do have swabs, yes.
And those swabs go in little containers to maintain their sanitary nature, correct?
That's correct.
In other words, if you see a blood stain, you don't just walk up with a Kleenex and try and wipe it up. There's a blood stain. There's a process for gathering that type of evidence, correct?
Sure. If you're looking for DNA, you can use a bloody Kleenex, to your point.
It'd be kind of an emergency.
Yeah, absolutely. My point exactly.
But if you're a mile from the Canton PD,
Yeah.
you could have gone back and done a swab.
Could have.
But you didn't.
Didn't want to because of the weather, because you just said because it's an emergency, and we thought it was an emergency there. I mean, the storm was coming down terribly, and I
John O'Keefe was already gone.
believe if we didn't collect that biological matter, we weren't going to get that biological matter.
But Canton PD was a mile and a half away, 4 or 5 minutes.
In a blizzard,
Still, in a blizzard, I've looked 3 minutes in good weather, probably 4, 5, 6 minutes in a blizzard, correct?
I'm not sure.
So let's call it 12, 15 minutes. You certainly could have done that. If you wanted to, you could have dispatched one of your officers to go back and get swabs and properly collect the blood material.
Sure. And I believe 15 minutes would have made a difference.
And what you did instead is, well, 15 minutes would have made a difference, but you asked Sergeant Good to drive to his house and get a leaf blower.
Yes, and while he was doing that, we were documenting the scene with photographs
You could have documented the scene with photographs even if you went back and get a swab. What's the difference?
because we were ongoing. It was ongoing. I wasn't leaving.
You're talking, but you're not giving answers. Like it's a struggle to explain this because he's like, oh yeah, well, it was okay to have him go run that errand, but not this errand. And Jackson's like, you could have just done something else while they ran that errand, right? Like the blood wasn't going anywhere. It was right there. 10 minutes, it was going to still be right there, right? Or better yet, you could have taken one Solo cup and scooped up some of it and waited for the swab for the rest and then thrown the red Solo cup away or put it in a Stop and Shop back, but had at least some done the right way.
Leaving the scene.
I didn't ask you to leave the scene. I didn't ask you if you
I
were leaving the
needed
scene.
the other officers. We talked about scene security. I already let one officer go. I now have 3 left. We're securing that scene.
So you saw paint stains in the snow, correct?
That's correct.
And you said, Officer Good, probably called Sean. Sarge, go home and give me blood.
That is correct.
Could have said, Officer Mulaney, get your blood over to Camp PD and pick up 10 swabs, correct?
He wouldn't have had access to the swabs
Oh, so now one of your officers should have gotten swabs, even if the lieutenant, ranking lieutenant, had dispatched him to go get a swab.
because he doesn't have access to the BCI, the officer's BCI, where our stuff is kept.
Did you make a phone call?
No, nobody there would have had access at that time. It was only Officer Dever on the desk.
So
It was just impossible for them to get the evidence bags and the swabs, is what he's trying to say.
person that could have gotten those swabs.
Sergeant Knight could have gotten him as well.
So Sergeant Knight could have too.
Sure.
But you didn't say that.
No, definitely didn't.
Okay. What you did do, however, is you went to the neighbor's house. Happened to be Tom Keller, right?
The lieutenant of detectives, yes.
And Lieutenant Keller gave you red solo cups.
Yes. I asked for plastic or glass containers. He had solo cups, and I utilized them.
The same kind of solo cups that we all see at backyard barbecues.
Yep, they hold liquid terrifically.
With a straight face, they hold liquid terrifically. Okay, it's another thing where I try not to, think too much myself. I would feel like this would insult my intelligence if he said this. I do. Netwoman, 50 lawyer, memberships for overtime. I'm starting to get a headache because I'm hungry, but I think we only have about 10 minutes left, so we're good. I can make it through. Thank you so much, Netwoman.
They're also not sealed, correct?
They are not.
They're also not used normally. I mean, they were here. They're not normally used for evidence collection, correct?
Oh, absolutely not.
And then you decided you needed to transport that very important biological material back to Camp PD for storage and safety, right?
That's correct.
And why was it important to transport that blood material so quickly? What are the factors that you considered, weighed and balanced, in terms of getting that material back to Camp PD in good condition, sanitary condition?
So a criminalist could extract a proper DNA sample.
What would happen, for instance, if that blood material, I don't know, were contaminated?
Contaminated how?
You tell me. You're a professional.
So DNA is pretty hardy, pretty forensically stable. The only thing
Contaminated how? Well, you tell me. You're the expert.
that are going to harm it are radiation, ultraviolet light, harsh chemicals such as bleach. That's not present here. Then you would have 2 sets of DNA when it's tested, which would benefit you.
Well, depends on whose DNA is.
That's correct.
He says, well, what happens? He's like, well, could be this or that, could get contaminated, or they could get 2 sets of DNA, which would benefit you. Really reaching. Remember, I say certain witnesses are credible, certain witnesses are just good witnesses. Of course, good for the prosecution, the person that calls them. Some really push for the person they are testifying to. And when you're supposed to be independent, like a cop who's supposed to be independent, sometimes you can really notice it. Lazy L, I agree with you. I've had people come at me and be like, oh, you're an idiot from Florida. You don't know snow. It's like, you're right. You're right. But even to an idiot in Florida who doesn't know snow, I know this isn't how you should do it. And you guys should be the experts on snow. If a crime happens in the snow, it's just like, sorry, victim, snowed today. We don't have any way to do this. It just can't be like that.
That's correct.
Yes. While you were, let me stay on this for a second. So obviously there's a reason why blood swabs or biological swabs are handled with such care. For instance, a DNA analyst is going to put on gloves.
Correct.
Oftentimes they're going to put on a mask. Right?
I don't know about that.
Oftentimes they put on goggles. Is that right?
So there are certain things that Jackson says that I think are like expanding a little bit too much, but I think this was a great point. It's like, you know why the evidence bags are more expensive than the Stop and Shop bags, sir? Did you really say that? There's a reason. There's a reason we do things a certain way, and you pay for something. And he's going to get into what it is that you pay for with those evidence bags.
Depends what they're testing.
Right. Yeah. But when you go out and collect something, you'll see CSI, crime scene investigators, in full body suits when they walk into a crime scene.
If you can.
Because you don't want to contaminate the scene with your own hair off your arm or an eyelash falling into a blood stain, correct?
That's correct.
Right. So there are protocols. And you said just a second ago, Gallagher, well, it's DNA. Unless somebody pours bleach in it, you're pretty much golden, right? That's not quite the fact.
And that's not quite what I said.
That's not quite what you said. You were suggesting that it's hardy enough, but that doesn't matter.
No.
It's contaminated or not. If there's multiple people's DNA, just benefits everybody.
No, I simply asked what you meant by contamination.
Okay. So contaminated.
Judy, don't you know? Nobody there could get it. They didn't have access to it. It's like, what?
With debris, is that right?
Sure, it can.
It could be contaminated with other people's DNA, is that right?
It can.
It could be contaminated with foreign items, foreign either aerosols or somebody's spittle when you're talking, correct?
No.
Get away with 1,000 things.
Hypothetically,
Right. Of course, these solo cups didn't have lids on them, right?
they did not.
They were open.
Yes.
You didn't photograph where you picked up the samples.
No.
You didn't document where you picked up the samples.
No.
So if the samples were in 6, how many solo cups were there?
6.
6 solo cups. We don't know as we sit here where each of those solo cups contents came from specifically, do we?
Specifically, no.
Okay. Then those solo cups with no lids were placed into a bag, right?
That's correct.
You said on direct examination that this was a brown paper bag, right?
It is. Stop and Shop, I believe.
And you said that
With a straight face, like literal straight. It's tough for me. I would not be able to do this. I could never do this guy's job right here, right? I could never sit there and say this with a straight face.
that Stop and Shop bag is, other than have the words Stop and Shop on it versus evidence on it, basically the one and the same thing.
Same dimensions, made out of the same materials. Yes.
Right. But with an evidence bag, we know exactly where it came from and who's handled it.
Not necessarily.
It comes from a manufacturer whose job it is to secure those bags so that they are not mishandled, so they can have some sort of bona fides that they're clean and ready to accept evidence. Say, for instance, I don't know, the investigation of a homicide of a police officer. Important stuff, right?
We're not at a homicide of a police officer at this point.
I'm just talking about evidence bags in general. Evidence bags in general. In other words, I'm trying to think about some of the most important investigations around. The manufacturers of those evidence bags manufacture them and send them in a way so that they're bona fides, that the provenance of those bags is maintained, correct, and protected.
That's the way they ship them. Yes.
Yeah, that's why they're more expensive. Fire medic, you must be a tough grader.
Kenton PD pays extra money for those bags for that very purpose.
I'm sure they do.
You mentioned almost tongue in cheek, look, except for the price, they're probably pretty close.
Yes.
There's a reason that there's a price difference, right?
What would the reason? What's the reason?
Well, it's not the shop, I'm going to pay 10 cents.
Yeah.
That bag's not really good. Who's? Where it's been, or who's handling it, right? It's got my milk and my eggs in it, really don't care.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how they price it because of how they package it. I don't have any knowledge of
Well,
that.
you don't want to mention the price.
Oh, no. Yeah, I agree with you on that.
I'm sorry, we're speaking over each
I
other.
apologize.
I'm sorry. No,
Yep.
There's a reason. My point is there's a reason, right? That evidence bags are more expensive because there is a way they're manufactured and they're taken care of, and Kenton PD is willing to pay that extra price like every other law enforcement agency because of that, correct? So they're not quite the same, are they?
No.
Bang. They're not quite the same, are they? No. Jennifer, can Alan Jackson ask about their best detective, Kevin Albert, being disciplined for leaving his service firearm in Proctor's vehicle after drinking? I do think it would open it up to some of the complaints about him if you're going to say he's your best detective or best officer, whatever he called him. That's a problem. Valerie, what are your thoughts about witness advocates? I've only heard of victim advocates before this case. They seem like an unfair advantage for the prosecution to prep coach witnesses. Is this a common practice? There are different areas that do have them. I don't have a problem with it. Tell a witness, where to go. This is unfair. You can't have a witness just sit here for 3 days straight. Witnesses don't know the process. It honestly doesn't bother me that much. Shannon, 8 minutes into Gallagher, he says he misunderstood where he was to go. He thought he was supposed to go to Meadows. Why? He didn't know who the victim was until he arrived at Fairview. There's a million different ways that could have happened. I don't know the answer as to why he was confused. Was somebody trying to doctor the report and say it was at Meadows, Fairview? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I don't really want to guess at the answer to that. And Nicole said, why did he go to JOK's first? Was he confused? Again, it does add to maybe not the best people showing up to do the job. Diamonds, do lawyers read juries for closings? If they sense Jackson isn't liked the best, do they swap the plan for who closes? Potentially, but it's really hard to tell if a jury hates a lawyer or loves a lawyer at this point in the trial. Mary Lou, enjoy watching trials with you. Thanks for the great streams. Something Karen Reed found not guilty. What happens next with trying to find justice for John O'Keefe? I mean, you can push for them to reopen the investigation to try to figure out what happened. But in reality, based on this investigation, I really don't think they can prove anybody did it. That's including a conspiracy. That's including third-party culprits. That's including anybody committed this crime. I just think there's not enough here because of a lot of what we're seeing today. Rebecca Corey, in your opinion, had this not been a cop death with cop friends, a cop house, etc., do you believe this investigation would have been handled different, or is this just a deficient police department? So I don't know. That crosses into, did they do this on purpose to protect the Alberts inside 34 Fairview, or did they just do a horrible job? Steve's Beyond Repair. Did they ever determine where the broken glass came from? Not that I know of. John's house or one of the bars, Albert's house. So I think Karen Reed even said, and there was testimony that he took it from the bar, but I don't know if they confirmed that, like matched it up with the bar glasses. I'm not sure. Candy Charlene. Why has no one asked about Higgins' Jeep being parked on the street? Wasn't it there between the driveway and Karen Reed when the kids came to pick up Julie Nagel? This question's been asked a couple times. I don't know why they didn't get into this today. I think it's another inconsistency. RRT, if jurors as young as reported, very unlikely they aren't watching TikToks about this. Why doesn't the defense just give something to Katie to read out loud? I do think that is an additional problem. You're right. That's a good point. Social media with a younger jury. Sweet Lorraine, didn't the grand jury decide to go ahead based on info that has now been disproven, like the ring video showing Karen Reed hitting John O'Keefe? Shouldn't there have been a new grand jury? So you'd be shocked at how often this happens. That, like the Murdaugh case, this happened too, where it's like they were just given information that's not correct. I think Koberger argued that. We don't really know everything happening with that, but lawyers argue this exact thing a lot. Debbie F. Cook, Bev keeps saying questions aren't evidence. Why do lawyers say, but the jury heard it with an objection is sustained and a question isn't answered? I don't know if a jury said, but I don't know if the lawyer said, but the jury heard it, but that might be why Bev Cudinoni is giving these instructions. If Brennan's like, well, the jury heard it, judge, so we need an instruction. But usually the lawyers aren't saying, oh, but the jury already heard it. Like the lawyers that are asking the questions, that would be inappropriate. When? Do you think this is going to lead into the taillight evidence for tomorrow? Do taillight talked about yet? I don't know. I can't really guess the order of what's happening here. Why wasn't the screen blocked off? Why didn't anyone, or the scene blocked off? Why didn't anyone go into the house? So to the owners, that baffles me. I agree. And he's like, oh yeah, nobody walked through the scene. There was no problem that we didn't, secure it. No problem. It's like, well, wait till we get to the CERT team where they're like, we're not so sure who a couple of those people were searching the scene with us. Churicity. There's still so much to get to in this case. I'm sure they have a tarp or bag of sorts in their car that they could have hauled over while one of them went 1.5 miles to get proper supplies. Here's the point. It wasn't a perfect situation, but they could have done better, much better. Mary Claire, I think it's important to remember that Karen Reed has MS, which can impact how she looks. Medication can also cause facial contortion. A little grace is all I'm saying. I'm talking about her looking, shaking her head, and then making comments while looking at the witness. That happened at the part we were watching. That's what I was talking about. They get their evidence bags from Temu. Matt, this guy comes across as Dennis Fung of this particular trial. Ann M. Gallagher said the bag was secured in the refrigerator. Photos show the bag in the Sally port behind Karen Reed's car. Am I misunderstanding? I think there are some issues with that. I think the defense is going to dig in more to that. So let's wait to hear what we see there. If you don't see reasonable doubt, you're a bolt. Okay. Love free. Karen's team has to point out that KDM just said cops heard she hit him an hour earlier. Now she's saying it wasn't a crime scene at the time. Well, he did get out with Gallagher, this guy that's on the stand, that Seraph never reported to him that Karen Reed said I hit him or confessed or anything like that. Also, this officer said he'd never seen an evidence log from where the blood was or who handled it from January 29th to February 2nd. How important is that? What does it prove? Does it prove she didn't hit him? She did hit him? No, it just proves a bad investigation. And that's the other thing where, like, if you're Brennan, is he smart to just not focus on this stuff and just kind of glide through it because it's not important. What's important is, did she hit him with her car? How can he prove that? Michelle, is a blizzard a good reason to ignore protocol? Officer Gallagher, I hope these jurors are as disgusted by his arrogance as I am. Navy Pearl, my husband is a retired military police, said, what the heck did he just say about why bags cost more? It's not great, right? It's not great. Welcome to Leona and all the new members. All right. Just over an hour and a half. I'm starving. I got to get home. I got to see my kids. I haven't seen them today. But thanks for hanging with me. Thanks for talking through the case. There's just so much going on. We will continue to cover it. Make sure you hit that like button. I think we can get to 25,000 likes. If all of you guys hit the like right now, we can get to 25,000 likes. Make sure you're all subscribed as well. We're going to continue following this. You guys are the best. Until next time, I'm out of here. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. And don't forget to check out the Lawyer You Know podcast with new seasons dropping every quarter. If you have a case you want to talk to us about, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, the lawyer you know.